My name is Sam Robinson, and this is the Gnostic Syncretist Podcast. Thank you for joining me tonight. Everyone is welcome, no matter their belief systems or background or tradition that they spiritually adhere to. This show is for absolutely everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you for watching tonight. So tonight, I want to go over a much abused topic, one that is quite familiar to me conceptually, and one that has been utterly, terribly abused and is just absolutely saturated with grifting, misconceptions, misunderstandings, and has just utterly devastated the informational ecosystem online regarding this topic, which is the Akashic Records, or according to Steiner's version, he calls it the Akashic Chronicle. Now, in the esoteric and occult traditions of Theosophy and Anthroposophy, and the ancient Mystery School traditions, the Akashic Records is a vibratory, energetic, spiritual medium and substance that is superphysical, non-physical, obviously, very high on the planes beyond the physical realm. And when Steiner and Blavatsky talk about Akasha, or the Akashic Records, they mean something very seriously specific, and something that not anyone can access easily at all, no matter how much practice or training goes into your practices and your meditations and your determination and your mantras. Those will not necessarily ever in this lifetime allow you to access these records. These records are of an extremely rarefied spiritual type on the planes way beyond the physical plane. This is not the etheric plane. Many people state that it's just on the etheric plane, and that's because they have clearly not studied thoroughly enough the esoteric cosmology that I've done some videos on. The planes of existence beyond the physical realm are vast and practically limitless, and they go from our physical reality in the 3D plane with the five senses all the way to the absolute and the one, the logos, the highest and most spiritual thing in existence in the cosmos. Akasha, according to Blavatsky and Steiner, is one of the highest aspects of all the planes. It exists on the highest planes, the principle of Akasha, which is not the astral. It is not the astral plane. It is not the astral light, which is what Eliphas Levi calls Akasha. He intermixes the concepts. Of course, he was pre-Theosophy and pre-Anthroposophy, and he either knowingly misconstrued it on purpose as a blind, which some people think that he did, like Blavatsky, or he did actually misunderstand it and thought the astral light was actually the Akashic Records, or Akasha itself. And the two are not necessarily the same thing. The principle of Akasha is the vibratory energy that comes down the planes, and there's 7 rarifications or types of Akasha. There are like 7 Akashas, just like there's 7 of everything. There's limitless planes. Every plane has 7 subplanes, and every subplane has 7 subplanes of itself, all the way down to us. It's a vast change of frequency and vibratory energy and rarefication of substance, cosmic substance, on every one of those levels, and we are at the lowest level. So the idea that I've seen online that you can easily access the Akashic Records by taking, let's see, you can just take a study course on this website. You can anyone can read the Akashic Records, they say. You just need to establish a meditative practice. Set your intention. Make sure that you have positive prayer and invocations of a special type, of course, that they will sell you, as well as connect with your own energy, interpret the information that you've hypothetically received, you thought you've received, and then continue practicing, and make sure that when you access the Akashic Records, supposedly, make sure you are asking the right questions. The problem with such a simplistic conception of this process is that, which you see everywhere online, people are paying for it, people are offering study courses in it, people are channeling it, people think they can access their own Akashic Records, which is not the same thing as accessing your past lives, which is probably what people think that they're doing, but they've mixed up the concepts. The Akashic Records is a hall of mirrored reflections of every being in existence's actions, thoughts, emotions, lives, histories, and future history as well. It is a compendium of vibrational, energetic, spiritual impressions on a field of energy so rarefied as to be basically unthinkable to humans. You can't think of it. You cannot conceive of it with your natural mental state of consciousness. It's impossible. It goes way beyond our state of consciousness. You'd have to be able to gain access to what's called superconsciousness in the esoteric tradition to even begin to engage with those records in that realm. And most people will never be able to do that in their lifetime. It will take many lifetimes of training, multiple soul journeys, slowly inching your way there to become a Steiner or a Blavatsky or a Lepus Levi or someone, one of these ancient Gnostic hierophants or Egyptian adepts of the priesthood, of the priest class, who knew the methods, who had done the training for life after life after life, with many previous lives, gaining experience and soul powers, literally. No one can do it on their first try. It's an absurdity. And I don't like saying that, but I mean, the facts are the facts. People are misconceiving, misrepresenting, and misunderstanding the Akashic Records, and then people are trying to make money on it, and they are making money on it. The idea that there is a set of detailed steps that allow any person without any prior knowledge to access the realm of Akasha, where the eternal medium of reflected actions for all beings that have ever existed and will exist, and this grand Manvataric cycle, which is, by the way, over 300 trillion years, according to Theosophy, is madness and totally incorrect understanding of this concept. This is not how it works. Very, very few individuals in the world can access these records. I've read a book recently this year, which is by Ouspensky, called Tertia Morganum. It's a very fascinating book. That was an amazing book where he was talking about getting into the fourth dimension, which is only the first step of even coming close to getting access to something like the eternal medium of mirrored records for all existence. That is only the first step. And that book came out 100 years ago. He was a Russian occultist after Blavatsky and around the same time as Steiner, though they never crossed paths, interestingly enough. But it's a very fascinating read, and he goes through the process of trying to come to an understanding of what fourth dimensional consciousness would even be like. And he comes close. And then in his other book, which goes into some of his experiences, which is, I think it's called, it's like a new concept for the universe. It's something akin to that name. I have it over there. But in his book, which is rare to see this, he lays out in a certain chapter of that book all the different steps that he went through, all the experiences, all the methods, all the thoughts and trappings of his attempt to go where others had gone before, like a Blavatsky or a Steiner or a Hierophant or a serious occult adept with superconsciousness states able to be accessed. He tried for years to do this, and he was no novice, and he was trying to figure out whether what all these people were saying, such as Blavatsky and Steiner, were making it up and were being fantastical and engaging in imaginative exercises of information, because he wanted to prove it to himself. And he got to a point where he got certain gleanings from his experiences and meditations that were very interesting, that had to do with accessing some higher realms, by no means the Akashic Record, but the further he went and the deeper he got, the more he realized how far there was to go. It was no easy task, and it took years of constant determined training and meditating and experimenting with his own meditation to even get to that level of experience, where he gained some access to impressions, just very basic gleanings of some of these realms and concepts that Blavatsky and Steiner would refer to, because they were extremely gifted psychics. They were born psychics. They were masters, and they had had many lifetimes of training before the training they did in their own lifetime. And it's a rarity to have an individual like that, and that's why a lot of people like that, especially those two, founded new schools of thought and occult traditions, and had so much vast, seemingly incognizable information to offer the world about cosmology, about the history of the earth, the history of humanity, root races, the lords, all the different spiritual hierarchies, the lords of form, the lords of mind, the lords of will, the lords of fire, and all the rest. How they even conceivably get this information out of their meditative states. It seemed an impossibility to him. So he attempted, and he got an inkling, just a small perception after decades of some of those experiences that he could tell would, if taken even further with someone with more experience, had led him to those such unimaginable scenarios of informational experience, which wouldn't be information like words or normal thoughts or emotions. They'd be like vibrational waves of impressions that would be very difficult to interpret. And he realized that he couldn't go that far, but that others, after doing it for that long, he realized others could do that if they were much more adept at this than he was. And he was able to accept that. And that was 100 years ago. And that was Ouspensky. And what's fascinating about that is that he was able to admit what his limitations were, and that after doing that much research and meditative experience and putting that much effort and determination and persistence into it for years, he was able to glean from those experiences that it was seemingly possible to go further than he had if you were much more skilled and much more adept at these abilities, at this accessing of superconsciousness states that go way beyond normal consciousness and thinking. It's beyond thought. It's beyond everyday consciousness. It's hard to even conceive of it without ever experiencing it. That's the point. It's beyond the five senses. If you can think of it, it's not that. If you can experience it on the daily, it's not that either. Whatever emotions or thoughts or impressions you get from the physical world or your own conscious states are nothing akin to these experiences, beyond even what Ouspensky was able to achieve with himself. And he was able to accept the fact that there were states beyond that, and that's what he said, that he now could say that they actually existed. So the idea that there are courses where you can pay someone $75 a course, take 20, 30, 72 courses on how to read your own personal Akashic records, does not exist. This is grifting. This is nonsensical. This is incorrect. This is not what the esoteric tradition states, the true esoteric mystery traditions, and what theosophy and anthroposophy state. Not to mention the ancient mystery schools would have stated. You cannot simply access this information. And what's amazing is the amount of information out there that is totally misleading people, either to make money or because they really do want to believe, truly, that it is that easy and that simple and that anybody can do it. We all want to believe that. The fact is, it's just not the case. I've never been able to do it, and I don't expect to. Abilities like that are extremely rare. I mean, Blavatsky stated at one point in The Secret Doctrine that there may be a half a dozen men or less in the entirety of Western civilization that could achieve states like that. And she said she was being generous. Period. That was her exact words. And at certain points, she said no one in the West could, only in the East. Because the materialistic mindset and worldview had made such an impression on the Western mind, especially back then, and it's got to be worse now, that it would be incapable of rising out of those materialistic mental states easily at all. I mean, we're talking serious crystallization of the mind. And, we're in we're rising into more spiritual states now, but it's only the beginning. You're not able to go so quick, so fast in the beginning of the end of this age and the rising into the new spiritual age. The rising out of matter is only just begun. So, and, the etherization of the world and ourselves is coming, but certainly not the Akashification or the astralification. That's not even anywhere close to coming. So, I mean, what else do we have? We have seek guidance if needed. Stay grounded. Be patient. This video explains 3 methods for accessing the Akashic Records. Read the Akashic Records, and then it shows an image of someone looking like they're doing something pretty magical. I mean, the amount of dross out there is truly mind-blowing. The Akashic Records are like a hall of mirrors, of reflections of everything that's ever occurred in reality in this cycle. At a cycle, there's many different types of cycles, but a full manvitoric cycle is a vast amount of time that's practically incomprehensible. It's over 300 trillion years. And there's all these rounds, there's all these incarnations of the earth, there's incarnations of yourself, there's root races. The monad progresses on this vast incarnation scheme through different forms and different vibrational frequencies and densities to get down to where we are here on the fully dense physical plane, which is the halfway point of the entirety of the cycle. We still have the other half to go, which is the rising back out of the physicality, back all the way to the source at the end, which is who knows how far away it is. It's millions, billions of years away. But we're on that upswing at this point. We're on the upswing of the arc. And so, after the Theosophy came about, the New Age was a derivative of those teachings. But it's been much abused. The New Age teachings and gurus have really watered all this down because the stuff's truly complex. It's sophisticated. It's complicated. The esoteric cosmology is very difficult to comprehend and to go through. And a lot of people don't even want to do it. And so there's been all these New Age teachings that come about that are watered down derivatives of Theosophy and Anthroposophy, which are just basically inaccurate simplifications of the true teachings, which are much more sophisticated and complicated and vast, detailed, in-depth accounts. I mean, we're talking serious depth. The Secret Doctrine by itself is 1,600 pages. I mean, even Steiner's Cosmic Memory, which I have behind me, even though that's small, it's only a few hundred pages, reading it is not simple either. The way he goes through the cosmology, which explains the certain levels of densification of the earth and the creation of man and the spiritual hierarchies that do that, creating, and the way it felt and existed to be an Atlantean, a Lemurian, or existing in the Sun or Saturn epoch when Earth wasn't even physical. To even try to wrap your mind around and imagine what he's even relaying to you is a difficult thing, because it's so beyond our experience in the material plane that it is no simple task to then rise back into those states, re-access something from those higher dimensional planes of vibratory energy and read the Akashic Records. It is not simple. It's not easy. It may not even be done in a single lifetime. But there have been individuals that have done this, like Blavatsky and Steiner, and that's the type of information that is gleaned from the Akashic Records, is cosmology, the differentiation of the absolute into the 2 and then the 3 and then the 10, like in the Kabbalah, and each one is a different state of consciousness, a different state of substance and matter and existence, all the way down from the most rarefied spiritual, the substance and consciousness you can possibly imagine, all the way down to supreme complexity and differentiation and crystallization of matter, which is very far removed from those spiritual states. Very far. I mean, it's not even the etheric state. That's just a one remove away. And then you have astral planes. Then you have mental planes. Then you have the higher mental planes. Then you have the lower spiritual planes and the mid-level and the higher spiritual planes, all the way basically seemingly into infinity. And the way this is handled is just so tragic to me. And I wanted to talk about it because there's so much nonsense, misinformation out there in the Akashic Records, and what has been said and gleaned from the Akashic Records by mystics and occultists throughout the centuries and millennia is extremely significant, pivotal, and fundamental and foundational to the esoteric tradition and the mysteries, and to humanity as a whole, to understand where they come from, what their origins are, what the origins of the universe and the planets and our different incarnations are, and the different layers of existence that are all interpenetrative, existing simultaneously, just on waves of energy and frequency that are totally invisible to our five sense consciousness, and can be accessed with extreme training over more than one lifetime. The real masters always state that. They do not mince words. They do not make it out to be like, oh, anybody can do it. They state that to truly be a high initiate and a hierophant like them, who were naturally gifted, takes more than one lifetime. They never seem to not say that. I mean, one of the best occultists that goes into lots of detail about how scientific the methodologies are and how you have to glean this information is Dion Fortune in all her different books, like on the mystical Kabbalah, aspects of occultism, the training of an initiate, esoteric orders and their work, psychic self-defense, occultism and spiritualism, the Hermetic philosophy. She has wonderful books that are almost a century old. Some of them are, but they're so short yet so obviously psychologically scientific and clearly a form of occult science. The way she explains these things, the words she chooses to use, all the different methodologies and balancing of forces to remain in equilibrium while you draw down manifestations or engage with higher planes, requires extreme skill. And just cursory reading of her books clearly show that it's an extremely complex, sophisticated science, and will be no simple matter whatsoever. Even astral project, even to gain basic psychic abilities like claircognizance, clairaudience, clairvoyance, engaging in astral projection or, remote viewing. These things cannot be taken on lightly, and to say you read the Akashic Records when you very likely did not is not helpful to the people that are thinking that they're pulling this off, and they may be, whatever they're doing, they may be helping their life, they may be progressing their life, but they are deluding themselves and thinking that they're drawing from this Akashic Chronicle when they're doing it. They're really just training spiritually and evolving their various bodies, their various spiritual bodies. They're evolving them, developing them, and they're getting different impressions and different layers of consciousness added to their own natural everyday layer of consciousness But that does not necessarily mean that because you've gained more access, that you've somehow, jumped to super consciousness states or engaged the astral realm or astral projection, because these realms are not to be taken lightly. I mean, if you read the Mystical Kabbalah or any of the real occult books, like ones from not Aleister Crowley, but Israel Regardie and Fortune and some of these others who try to explain those processes, they always give warnings, they always give caveats about how difficult it is, how easy it is to get lost or have things misrepresented to you by either your own subconscious mind while you're there, and misinterpret events that you experienced while in those areas of reality, and then come back with the wrong information, or have a hard time coming back, or be misled by the denizens of the plains, whether they're not necessarily evil, they're not necessarily good. They're just the denizens of those plains, and they can engage in mischief. They can misrepresent themselves. They have their own lives and their own reasons for things, and they may not involve your reasons at all. So there's like different methods and techniques for determining whether the entity that you're encountering is actually the correct entity from the correct plane, with different signs and words and knowledge of the colors and the different elements involved in the areas that you go to specifically, which is what they do, is they go there specifically for a specific reason, to a specific place in the plains, to encounter specific entities or information. And if it does not add up, you use the proper signs. If you encounter an entity that seems to be deceptive, or the incorrect entity, meaning you're on the wrong plane that you're trying to get to, there's different methods and techniques for determining whether they are on the correct plane or whether they're deceiving you. And, they teach you those things. You have to memorize all these things. You have to make a mental library of a compendium of information that must be fully instilled into your mind, to where there's no hesitation to be able to pull it out at that instant, to determine what you are encountering or experiencing at that moment. And if it seems like it's going to go poorly, they say to travel back, come back to your body, and try another day. They don't take any risks. It's simply a risk to even go to these places, to even try to do these things without training or a cosmology, even a theoretical cosmology or conceptualization, is extremely dangerous, they say. And it takes years of training, not just meditative training, but actually reading and studying the symbols, the Hebrew symbols, the symbols of the elements, and the symbols of the zodiac, and the symbols of the planets, and the symbols of the Kabbalah, and work your way up the tree. Study the tree itself every day as a meditative practice, and then work your way up the 22 paths. And in each path you will encounter things as I've just explained. And you'll know what to do when those times come and those experiences, because you'll have memorized everything needed to know where you are and what elements are involved, what signs are involved, what energies are supposed to be present, what colors are supposed to be present, what entities are supposed to be present, what realm you're in, whether it's the realm of the seraphim or the realm of the archangels or the realm of the choirs of angels, or Tzakiel or Metatron or Ehe, or any of these god names of there's 4 types of names. There's the god names, there's the angelic names, there's the archangelic names, and then there are the mundane spheres names, like the prima mobile, which is Kether, on the plane, the lowest plane of Absolute. So, I mean, it's very complicated, and people really have a misconception, not only what they're doing, of what they can do, and what's involved in accomplishing it properly and effectively, and coming back with information and really just self-development. Because that's the main goal here, is to self-develop. It's not about imagining that you're going to actually access these Akashic records. I mean, that level of information is basically a Steiner or a Blavatsky level of information. And when that information is released to the public, It's a wonderful thing. It transforms everything, gives us a new worldview, a new cosmic conception of where we are in the universe and who we are and what we're comprised of our seven bodies and the various planes of existence and the level of cosmic differentiation, the cosmic scheme of evolution and involution, down the planes and back up, back to source. It's that level of information that comes from the Akashic planes, that it comes from the Akashic Records and the Akashic Chronicle. And it's, even if you got there, experiencing and then bringing back a proper interpretation of what you even encountered would be extremely difficult, as it was even for Steiner and Blavatsky. He says that. He had a very hard time initially being able to interpret such impressions. It's not like they come to you as like a dreamlike vision. It's a totally foreign experience, never encountered by yourself, ever, with no context or previous experiences that can give you sure footing in that realm. It's totally novel, and thus the level of easily misinterpreting or misrepresenting your experience is vast, and thus you have to be very scientific about what you think you've uncovered and encountered when you come back down. They'd always write it down. They'd keep a journal, and they'd cross-reference everything with their own subconscious content, so you have to know yourself very well. You have to not only know the cosmology very well and what you're supposed to encounter, but you'd also have to know your own subconsciousness very well so that you can filter out your own subconscious impressions from the overall superconscious state and impressions you get from these higher realms, because they get mixed up. They always say that in all these books. So, what else do we have here? See, here we go again. What are the Akashic records of a person? Well, they've never mentioned that in any of the books I've read. There's no Akashic records for individual people. There's past life regression. There's a past life, and that's contained in your monadic ego, the I, the one that is of the higher mind and the higher of your mental bodies. They call it the higher manas in Theosophy. Blavatsky that's what she calls it. There's the lower and the higher mind, and the higher mind partakes in the Atma Buddhi spiritual essence, and is the one that reincarnates every time. It is like your receptacle of past lives and incarnations, and it is always with you. But accessing it is not always wise and never easy. And that is your divine spark, your monadic spark, which is the receptacle of all those lives. That is what people are accessing, not the Akashic records. They're accessing their own monadic record, and they're calling it the Akashic record. They say it's an imprinted on the Akasha, the astral light, which is described by spiritualists as a fluid ether existing beyond the range of human senses. It's not ether. It's not made of ether. Ether is just the next few planes above us. It's a chemical ether, a light ether, a life ether, and a reflecting ether. And those are the next four planes. And they're considered part of the physical plane by the Rosicrucians, who explain this. Then you have the astral planes. Then you have the mental planes. Then you have the spiritual planes, at least in their cosmology, which gives a rundown of this. But the ether is nowhere near those planes and has nothing to do with the Akashic records or the astral light. I mean, there's at a certain place, there's a mixing of astro-etheric energies, what they call the Leia point in Theosophy, where it jumps to the next plane. And it's almost like a vortex of a neutralizing center of dimensionality, where the energies and vibrational frequencies shift up to the different dimensionality above a certain spot of rarefication. And those last centers are not an easy concept to understand, but it's a shift of state of consciousness and of substance to the next more rarefied state, the more spiritualized state or plane. And these Laya centers, are at certain points. They're not like in space in a point, but they're like a threshold that you reach, and then you push beyond. And this is where astral and etheric energies meet in planes and density and matter. And to say that it's a fluid ether is just incorrect. I mean, that's divination, mysticism, reincarnation on the Akashic Records. Tips for reading the Akashic Records. Ground yourself. Say an opening prayer out loud. Ask for the information you're looking for. Well, how can you do that if it's supposed to be beyond thought and beyond your average state of consciousness? You can't form it into words. You don't go ask the Akashic Records for information. You immerse yourself in those vibrational fields of energy and information, and then struggle mightily, I'm sure, to try to draw any sort of conceivable experience that you can comprehend cognitively back down with you, which would be very difficult because it's beyond thought in words, because words are related to thoughts. They're of this physical plane. They have nothing to do with the higher planes. You cannot ask these things questions. You can only receive impressions. And maybe send out an impression. Certainly not a thought. It's just not, it just doesn't really work that way. And they always explain it far better, but far more complexly in all the real esoteric traditions books that are much more complex than things that are seen to be this simple. They even say that, there are divine spiritual beings in these realms, or are keeper of the Akashic Records. There's no keeper of the records. There are the spiritual hierarchies. There are entities that exist in all these different planes. There's no one needed to guard the records. It's not like a bastion that with a keep around it in the etheric realm, like with an etheric moat around it, that needs guards. It's a reflecting medium of rarefied vibrational substance and energy. There's no need to have a keeper of the chronicles. The universe is the keeper of the chronicles. The absolute, the logos. It's an emanationary scheme. Thus, everything is contained within the deity. Nothing is outside the deity, because to be outside the deity is an absurdity, which would be non-existence. If there is an existence, it is the deity. It is everywhere. It is all encompassing. Thus, there's no need to protect it. There's no keeper. The keeper is the plane itself. Let's see, if someone says in this realm there are people that protect it, and then someone says no, entities are living within or protecting the Akashic Records, and this person is correct. There's no one protecting them. They're not living in, they're denizens of those planes, but they're not technically living within the records. They're just living within their plane that also happens to be the reflecting realm of all impressions from existence. And that just happens to be, so to speak, their natural environment at that point. Someone says the Archangel Metatron oversees the Akashic Records. And this is a half-truth, as people like to say. Metatron is one of the highest level divine God words in the Kabbalistic teachings. It's very high up there. It's pretty sure it's the Archangel of Kether. Not the divine name, the archangelic name. Either that or it's Banah. So I'm pretty sure Hey is actually the very first divine God word for Kether. Metatron's pretty high up there, but I wouldn't call him the keeper of the records. He's on a spiritual vibrational level to what would be considered Akasha in the cosmology, but to say that he, so to speak, sort of presides over the records is not quite accurate. I mean, the amount of stuff you can find on the Akashic Records that is either a half-truth or pseudo-occultism or pseudo-esotericism is truly beyond belief. They say, by seeing your own records, you are working with the record keepers. Not only will you learn your soul's purpose and help solve the problems that crop up in everyday life. No. Like, stop right there. Solve your own problems for everyday life. The Akashic Records is the history of the ages, of the eternities. It has nothing to do with your everyday life. This is such an immense amount of information that your mind would probably be shattered from even being impressed by it at all. It's be like trying to drink in the ocean of knowledge in a tiny little beaker or bottle and trying to hold it all. That would be the equivalent. You can only immerse yourself in it, and you cannot contain it or drink it in. It's like the drop trying to swallow an ocean. It has nothing to do with your everyday problems. It has to do with cosmic knowledge, macrocosmic information on that scale, which is why typically when anyone refers to the Akashic Records or the Akashic Chronicle, they are referring to cosmological information. And that information is extremely pivotal for humanity to attain. And it doesn't come about very often that it's released or even acquired by anyone. And if it is required, they keep it to themselves, most likely. In the last 200 years, we've had a few adepts, like Blavatsky and Steiner, release that information to us, and we've been very lucky. And we should be grateful that they did, because it's not very often that ever occurs. I don't know how many people in the occult secret traditions and societies that are all over the place. No one knows how many there are. No one knows the number of the orders. The number of orders out there. We're not talking about Freemasonry. We're not talking about fake Rosicrucians. We're talking about the ones you don't know about, and I don't know about either. Just know that they exist. And they're hidden. And they probably have adepts that can probably pull some stuff out. Or engage on those planes at the least. But they don't typically want to give that information out because it's a power differential between the average humanity, the exoteric masses, and the esoteric adepts and societies that like to hold this information back from the rest of us, either because they don't think we're ready, or because they want that power differential so that they can better keep control of us in some sort of complex, power hierarchy that has long existed for thousands of years. I'm of the mind that this information that's of a cosmological type, and some of the methodologies and techniques and training for even engaging this information should be put out and released and taught. And we should have universities teaching it, but serious ones, with serious teachers and serious students, which is not what we're saying at all. Because we need that power differential to cease to exist. We need humanity to awaken. We need humanity to evolve into higher states of consciousness collectively, so that we can move beyond this egoic, materialistic, consumer mindset and civilization and worldview of consuming and existing only to look at your mirrored self on the physical plane and revel in it, and revel in what goods you can gather up materialistically, made of matter, and hoard to yourself, and get accolades from your other fellow man. This is not the sum of our culture. This is not the sum of humanity. This is our current state, in part brought to us by elite dark occultists and elite regular occultists who are running the world. An occultocracy, some have called it, that has been around for a long time and do not want the masses to spiritually develop out of their grasp and out of their power structures, out of their societal constraints, and to grow and develop collectively as one species, pushing beyond and into our greater potential, which is what this information can allow you to do, either individually or collectively. But it has to be done properly, and it has to be done accurately, and it has to be done patiently and determinedly and slowly, step by step, over and over again, every day. And you have to understand the concepts and the cosmological ideas and schemes involved before even engaging in practice. They always say that in every one of these books. Cosmological theory and scheme first, practice second. Because you don't even know what you're going to encounter. You have no framework or context of the realms you're going into, of the planes of existence you're about to encounter, or the entities there. You're going blind into a foreign land, so to speak, without any knowledge of what you're going to encounter. At the least, you must have that knowledge first, which is part of the reason that I'm doing this video, is because people don't have that knowledge, and the people that are out there are grifting and mis-explaining this and misrepresenting this to a lot of people, either to make money or because they really believe the stuff that they're saying. But either way, there's far more information out there that's incorrect and half-truths and pseudo-esoterica than there is true occult traditional knowledge on this information, which is totally accessible to anybody who wants to go read those traditional books from Theosophy and Anthroposophy and Dion Fortune to Eliphas Levi, Ouspensky, all these great thinkers and occultists from the last 200 years. Or you can go even further back and study the ancient mystery schools. There's plenty of those to study. Study the Gnostics. But the stuff you find today in the New Age teachings and the alternative spiritual communities is a bunch of half-truths and pseudo-esoteric science. And just some of it just total flat-out misinformation and spiritual dross meant to grift and take your money. I mean, what did I find here? Accessing the... Let's see. Here's one person. The Pleiades. Where are the Akashic Records? Someone asks. The Akashic Records exist in the Pleiades star cluster, somebody says. This is how it has channeled through to me. Everything I'm saying today has come through my work within the records and what I have channeled. If you want to think about our night sky and the Pleiades as the library where all our soul history is stored, I cannot conceive of a more misunderstood conception of the Akashic Records than I think it's in the Pleiades star system that's made of physical matter and substance just like our own place. That is utterly false. And I don't know what this person is talking about, but this is another thing that you encounter. The New Age community is very much involved with either spiritual aliens or channeling or the Pleiadians or the Syrians or some star system, as if space was anything but still the physical plane. These are planes far beyond the physical, inconceivably rarefied in vibration and frequency. Quantum, if you will, much further than quantum. But if that's the only way I can try to explain it to a lot of people, it's quantum reality. It's far beyond quantum reality, if you have any conception of what that is. It is a place where things exist in a state that is totally the inversion of where we are. Things are reflected back at you. You have to learn, according to Steiner's book on the fourth dimension, you have to learn how to think backwards, read backwards, conceive backwards when you go there, because things are reflected. Thus, they are inverted in your experience of the plane. Thus, you have to learn how to experience things in an inverted fashion on those astral planes to even be able to understand what you're encountering, because it's a mirrored reflection of this plane, and it's also a reflection of the plane above it. Sorry, we are a mirrored reflection of that plane. It's like an etheric blueprint that is built, that then the physical plane is built around that. It's the foundation. Then the matter coalesces around that and becomes crystallized. Back beyond those planes of the etheric plane, the astral plane is a mirroring into the etheric plane, and it coalesces around that. So you could say the etheric plane is an inversion in a mirrored reality when you go back to the astral plane. It's reflected into the etheric plane, just like the mental plane reflects into the astral plane, and spiritual planes reflect into the mental planes, and so on and so forth. Thus, each step up is more confusing and more discombobulating without the training, without the new way of thinking and conceiving of what a mirrored reflection would even be experienced like. It's not simple at all. So I just really wanted to cover this. I know this is a little bit longer than I normally do for a video, but this is a topic that's so misunderstood and needs much attention by spiritual thinkers and people that like G.G. Young or Dark Journalist or Mark Passio and others who actually try and teach the true esoteric traditions. Either whether it's anthroposophy or theosophy, both are valid. Both have much more complex explanations and detailed schemes of how reality is a layered reflecting of essences all the way down to the bottom and back up to the top to the absolute. G.G. Jung does an amazing job explaining these things from the anthroposophical perspective and scheme, which is that's the thing. When it comes to cosmology, all these different traditions, especially the more modern ones, but even the Gnostic ones, they all explain cosmology with the same types of concepts because they've all, so to speak, read the Akashic Records, thus reading the scheme of reality, and they've all read it the same. And that's how you can counter-check whether someone has misread the Akashic Chronicle or not, is because it'll be vastly divergent from the traditional conceptualization of esoteric cosmology. And if it deviates that much, it is most likely a misrepresented or misunderstood experience in those places. And they come back with that and they think that that's reality. That's the danger. And it's always a present danger without the training and without taking it as a science to make sure you filter out your own content from your own mind out of the experience you're having and then counter-check when you get back from the experience itself. Something Dion Fortune always mentions every time is you must always come back and be extremely objective about what you experienced and not just be willy-nilly about it, not just, basically give in to the idea that you had exactly the experience you wanted. People can want it so badly that they can tell themselves they've experienced exactly what they want, but we are very good at self-illusion as a species. We are very good at lying to ourselves and not being objective, especially in our own subjective content, subconscious content. And that's why the many, many warnings about coming back from that experience and being extremely objective and filtering out in a scientific methodological way the content got mixed up from your own mind, your own psychic mind, into the experience itself and filter it out and then aggregate and collate and systematize what you did find from the experience that was not from yourself. And, that's basically what I have to say on this topic. I recommend anyone go and read The Mystical Kabbalah by Dion Fortune. I know some people say it's antiquated. I think it's superb. It's an amazing book. It's right there behind me. It's one of the best books I've ever read. Can't seem to read it enough. And any of her other books, they're not long. That's the longest one besides Psychic Self-Defense, and it's only 300 pages. It's not easy, and it's much shorter than something like The Secret Doctrine. But it is it's a new way of thinking and training the mind that's counterintuitive to normal everyday consciousness and logical thinking. It's all about force and form and contrasting polarities and equilibriums, and it's very, very, very interesting, but a totally foreign scheme of divine complexity, truly. It is a glyph of reality that is meant to train the mind, not inform the mind, as she always says. So, my name is Sam Robinson. This is the Gnostic Syncretist Podcast. This is the Gnostic Syncretist channel. Thank you for joining me. This has been about the Akashic Records. Please like and subscribe and share this around. And I would like to go over some of this content again. I'd also like to cover some misconceptions about astrology and astrological science, as well as alchemy and the alchemical process and what is the alchemical gold and the philosopher's stone. What is it really and what is it not? Were they really just chemists? Were they really just trying to make an infinite amount of money? Or is there something much more to this alchemical gold? Something much more metaphorical, something much more abstract and metaphysical in this process of alchemical purification. So, thank you for watching. Once again, my name is Sam Robinson. You have a great evening, and we'll be seeing you next time.